Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone where you're joining us today. I'm so excited that you're all able to join us today. I'm Nikki Barron. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission at Hamilton College. I'm also a Hamilton alum. I graduated from Hamilton in 2002. Congratulations to all of you for your admission to Hamilton. We are so excited at the possibility that you will be joining us next year. I know some of you joining us today have already decided to come to Hamilton, and some of you may still be deciding whether to come to Hamilton. So this opportunity this evening is a chance for you to hear directly from 3 of our partner programs. I know that we have offered a number of other virtual events for our admitted JANs. If you were able to join us for those events, or if you saw the recording, you already had an opportunity to hear from some of our current students who were admitted to Hamilton as JANs. You heard about their fall experiences, how they spent the fall before coming to Hamilton. You also heard about their experience as they arrived to Hamilton and how they've now integrated and been and joined our campus community successfully. So this evening, we are specifically going to hear from our 3 partner programs. We have wonderful partnerships with the School for Field Studies, Arcadia University, and the Sea Education Association. So I'm joined this evening by 3 representatives from all of these great programs. They will each introduce themselves, and they will also give you an overview about their program. They will each present for a brief amount of time. They'll give you an overview of their program and their application process. And then toward the end, we'll save a little bit of time if you have any questions about any of these partner programs. But these are all great options for you to pursue. And if you pursue any of these 3 partner programs in the fall before coming to Hamilton, you will earn academic credit for these experiences that will then transfer to Hamilton. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists so that they can introduce themselves and we can get started. Mark, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having us here. I'm happy to be talking with you this evening. My name is Mark Long. I'm with the Sea Education Association, Associate Professor of History and Associate Dean for Academic Partnerships. And I think it's my 5th year in this setting, 3rd one virtual. So.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Rogers. I am the Assistant Director on the Advising and Student Engagement team at Arcadia. And prior to this role, I was the Program Advisor for the Hamilton JAN program. So like Mark, this is not my first time talking to Hamilton JAN. So I'm really looking forward to discussing that program with you today.
And my name is Devin Foxall. I'm the Director of Institutional Relations with the School for Field Studies. We're an environmental field-based study abroad organization located just north of Boston. And in my role, I connect students from schools throughout the Northeast, including New York State, with SFS programs. And again, I think that maybe 3rd or 4th time presenting to the Hamilton JANs.
Great. So we will begin with Devin presenting about the School for Field Studies program.
Perfect. So the School for Field Studies was formed shortly after the very first Earth Day by a group of individuals who wanted to get college and university students out into the field where they could learn the best science in order to tackle the most pressing environmental issues of the day. And they knew that they had to get them across the world so that anything that the Earth offers, we could then reflect through our academics. So while the structure of any SFS program is quite similar in any semester, whether you go to Bhutan in the Himalayas, you'll be studying mountain ecology. Turks and Caicos, diving in the Atlantic, that would be marine studies. Tanzania and Kenya and East Africa, wildlife management studies. So through these 10 options around the globe, we try to bring about through our academics, coursework, programming, anything that the Earth has been able to offer to us. So what is the SFS Experience? Yes, we're this nonprofit environmental study abroad organization. So that student who is interested in biology, environmental studies, environmental sciences, or just tangentially, or they want a very field-based experience in some of the most biodiverse, iconic ecosystems in the world, this would be the program, great option for them. It's very hands-on science. At least half your credit hours would be spent out in these ecosystems rather than in a classroom. As I showed earlier, you are exploring some of the most biodiverse, iconic ecosystems of the world, anything from the Serengeti to the Peruvian Amazon rainforest, to the lower parts of Patagonia, or the oldest rainforest in the world in the Daintree of Australia. It's a real research at the end of it that is all done for the local community. So there's a form of reciprocity to all the academics, which I'll talk about more. And then I think one of the best part about it is you're going on this program with usually around 24 to 28 other students. And these are all students who want this same kind of experience. So you're very much in this community of like-minded peers. A big thing to know about the School for Field Studies is it's center-based. So there's a very residential feel to any of the programs. You can see 4 of the centers here, Panama in that upper left-hand corner, by the pool, Costa Rica, where you'll often find our students practicing the Pura Vida lifestyle in those hammocks. Down there in the Turks and Caicos by the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, within 30 seconds, you're in the water. Or in Kenya, that's a photo I was able to take right outside of my banda, where Mount Kilimanjaro is about 10 miles away, and you enjoy your morning Kenyan coffee right across from the tallest peak in all of Africa. The cool thing, the interesting thing I believe about the centers with that residential feel is you're all living together, so you're forming these lifetime bonds doing this semester program with each other. But also there's all these sort of unscheduled times when you might be meeting with the faculty and staff to explore and discuss the program. So you might be having your chapati and eggs in Tanzania across from your ecology professor. You might be sampling some of the wonderful fish sauces in Cambodia, speaking about your research project across from your environmental policy professor. So it's a really interesting place, especially if you've never loved those giant classrooms and raising up your hand. There's all these unscheduled one-on-one times where the learning essentially never stops. But we're not just at the center. Very often, this is your classroom. This is where you're going to be spending most of your semester, laying a transect to measure coral acidification in the Turks and Caicos, or analyzing or living with elephants in the Cambodian highlands. This would be a typical day in the field with the School for Field Studies. So the academics, you would be bringing back credits to Hamilton. Typically, a semester comes back as a semester. We offer 3 core courses that everyone on your program would take. There's an ecology course, an NRM, natural resource management, and then usually something more of like the softer sciences, socioeconomic policy. All that leads up to the final 4 weeks where you're doing this large capstone research project with our faculty out into the field. There's a language and culture course, which is just the 2 credits in every location except for Australia and Turks and Caicos. And the prerequisite to go on the program would be a college level course in, say, ecology, environmental science, environmental studies, biology, sustainability, or a 4 or a 5 score in the AP biology or environmental science tests. So admissions, pretty much any study abroad provider is going to be very different than applying to undergraduate. It's rolling admissions. So the earlier you start your application, the earlier you complete your application, the better your chances of acceptance. Right now, I would just say to start an application soon because the programs do fill. You don't need to know this now. You can contact me later for more information, but the Apply Soon programs, those where I'd really push you to start, like, prioritize this because there's limited capacity. It would be Australia, Chile, Panama, Tanzania, Turks and Caicos. Bhutan is not even on here right now. We're just doing it at waitlist. But these 5 programs would be the Apply Soon programs. And what you can actually do is just start an application, fall 22, put in Hamilton, put in your email, and then we'll give you updates when we feel like the program is very, very close to filling. So while we offer 10 programs around the world, in the interest of time, I'll give you a quick run through of 8 of them to sort of give you an idea how they are each unique. So Australia is one of our two oldest programs. We've been here since 1987 in a very small town in Northeast Australia. This program is probably the most rural or off the beaten path of all of our locations, in that you are a 20-minute car ride from a town of 1,000 people. So you're a 20-minute car ride from a town whose undergraduate population is half of Hamilton College. Now, that might scare some off, but the students you would be going with are all the ones who are not scared off by this, because they want this experience. Being in the Australian rainforest, some of the only rainforest left in Australia, and then even getting up into the Daintree, which is the oldest primary rainforest in the world. And when I talk to alumni, the word they use most often is prehistoric. There are ferns that go up 40 to 50 feet in the sky, moths the size of your two hands put together. I think of all 10 of our programs, Australia is the closest thing that we have to an ecological time machine, so that you can really go back and to see what the world might have been like on a different path. Cambodia is one of our two Asian programs. Bhutan is the other one, but Bhutan is completely at wait list, though you might consider it later in your Hamilton career. But Cambodia is very similar in that we set this program up to be the most social science focused of all of our programs. So yes, you'll be studying things like elephant ecology and climate change impacts, but in a real way, you're studying it in the connection of its impacts on the local communities, on humans of Cambodia, and then humans of Siem Reap. So that might be on any given day discussing the Buddhist influences and why certain forests are never being cut down, even by the most aggressive poachers. And it would discuss environmental justice, how many community groups are trying to rise up to challenge the government, who is often corrupt in the ways of looking the other eye when it comes to, say, like animal trafficking. So it's a good program if you want like this broad range of academic interests, whereas say the Turks and Caicos program would just be marine biology every day, all the time. The one thing I caution students about the Cambodia program is you guys are now admitted to Hamilton College. I'm guessing for most of you, you've never met a challenge that you couldn't immediately conquer and overcome. But Cambodia can be tricky for the students because they go on the program and they are battling things like species extinction and pollution and poverty. And they leave the program very often saying that it was a bit of a spiritual butt kicking and that they're kind of going home with more questions than answers. But you know what? I think that is part of education, to be challenged beyond like your comfort levels at some point. So if that feels like a program for you, the Cambodia program is accepting apps. The Chilean program at the very bottom of Patagonia, and I think we'll be back into Argentina for about 10 days on this program as well. This is our newest program. We surveyed all of our alumni. We asked, what's the most pressing environmental issue of the day? Probably not surprisingly, climate change came back. Now, climate change will be studied throughout any of our programs. It's sort of like this hidden thread that runs through everything that we do. But this would be the one where we really tried to put it front and center in the academics, the programming, the syllabi, the credits that you later acquire. So the climate change impacts and resilience of the local landscapes and people, different conservation policies that they're looking at. It's a fantastic program if you really like to get out there. We currently have 14 or 15 different excursions throughout both southern Patagonia in Chile, over into Argentina, down to Ushuaia, the smallest or the southernmost city in the world, and then even back up into northern Patagonia, into areas that are the second driest desert in the world. So you are seeing some of the great national parks of South America, these iconic mountain ranges, but also multiple different ecosystems in this city near the bottom of the world. Costa Rica would be the program I'd say is perhaps the closest we have to a liberal arts education, where in any aspect of environmental studies, you will be studying that for at least a week during the program. So yes, climate change is in there, but also tropical ecosystems, permaculture, sustainable ecosystem, agroforestry and conservation. More and more we're studying sustainable agriculture. Costa Rica is one of the leaders in this, and they're, as a country, they're actually #2 behind Bhutan, so that they'll be the #2 country in the world to become carbon neutral. So as I mentioned, in Cambodia, you're sometimes studying how things have not gone well. In Costa Rica, you're mostly studying things how they have gone well. However, when things go well, it usually attracts a lot of people. And so now the country and the sustainable development that they're studying here is trying to weigh this balance between preserving what makes the country special, these ecosystems, these forests, at the same time that many tourists want to come and experience it, but thus risk damaging the very thing they came for. So those are the questions that we're just exploring in Costa Rica. And at the center, there's a Rainforest Alliance certified organic farm. So students will volunteer at the farm. Many of your pigs, eggs, chickens come right from the farm, greens, mangoes, oranges. And usually your morning orange juice is literally being picked by your fellow students right off the orange trees, juiced right there, and then brought to the table. Kenya. Kenya to me is, of all of our 10 locations, the one where I can use the word magic and just not feel completely foolish about it. You are, as I showed you before, just a few miles away from Mount Kilimanjaro. You're at a very low-lying place, so picture sort of like a flat land, but then the highest point in all of Africa, which would match the highest point in all of North America with McKinley in Alaska, 20,000 feet, right at your doorstep. And it actually has its own sort of weather patterns that you can watch swirling around it. And not only that, but the people themselves are some of the most welcoming and gracious of any location that we operate in. This is one of our other 2 oldest programs. So we've been in this community, this location, for close to 4 decades. And when the students come to study wildlife, to study the wildlife-human interactions, the local Maasai group will actually lead them in a dance throughout the center, bring them to the ceremonial place where a goat is slaughtered. They prepare it incredibly respectfully, telling the students and the staff at every step why it is they're doing it in a certain way, what it means to them, and then having this communal goat roast with the students, the staff, and the local community. I guess you could call it an orientation, but I don't think this kind of like orientation exists on any other program. And of course, you're by some of the great national parks of all of East Africa. Panama is the one that we call surf and turf, in that within 30 seconds of waking up, you can be in you hang left and you are in the Caribbean Ocean, or within 30 seconds of waking up, you hang right and you are in the Panamanian rainforest. So we're on this very tiny island off the coast of Northwest Panama, exploring marine life, terrestrial life, and essentially how the health of one impacts the health of the other. It's also a program where we travel quite a bit throughout it. Perhaps the highlight excursion, at least to my interest, would be the students will watch the sun rise over the Caribbean Sea, travel through the country, going through many different ecosystems the entire time, and end the day, the same day that they watch the sun rise over the Caribbean, they'll watch the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. That is the day in the field for the Panama program. It's also probably the best program if you're very interested in indigenous environmental rights and justice. Where we are in Bocas is sort of the indigenous home for many groups in Panama. And some of the research involves them. And then a lot of the research is then used by our students to tell their story to government officials who sometimes don't interact with the people who live just a mile or so away from them. So 2 more programs to show you, and then I'll turn it over. Tanzania is our other wildlife program. Compared to Kenya, there's maybe 2 differences I would look at. Tanzania, the center itself is a little more manicured. It's about 5,000 feet in elevation, so it's very cool nights. It is much more forested, so you don't have these expansive views everywhere. It's a little newer, so maybe not as rough around the edges, whereas the KBC, the Kenya Bush Camp, is very much of what you would expect a bush camp in southern Kenya to have looked like in the 1950s or 60s. A little more rustic. You got that hot water shower that you have to turn on with the little electric knob, and if you're student of the month, it would actually work. But Tanzania, again, you're by the great national parks. The last time I was there, right before we got to the center, about 10 minutes away, we had to stop because giraffes and zebras were crossing the road. But it's beautiful because 20 minutes away, there's Lake Manyara, incredible. 20 minutes past that, there's Ngorongoro Crater, which even if there was no wildlife there, I would still think is one of the 3 most impressive like physical marvels that I'd ever seen in my life, but there are wildlife there, which makes it even better. And then usually 7 to 10 days camping out in the Serengeti under East African stars. Tanzania is very much more focused on the wildlife, and Kenya is very much focused on the wildlife and then the greater sort of East African context. So communities, politics, whether wildlife is impacting natural resources. That would be the other big difference. So finally, Turks and Caicos. This is your marine program, full stop for us. So if you want to do marine biology, this is your interest. I would go to Turks and Caicos. Again, very small location. South Caicos, it's just 1,200 people. So the entire island is smaller than the undergraduate population of Hamilton College. But I had spent 5 years or so traveling around the world, scuba diving, snorkeling in many locations. They took me here to learn about the program. It was by far the most biodiverse and exciting marine life I'd ever seen. We went out 5 times. Each of those times saw sharks that were about 6 to 8 feet long. We saw rays with a wingspan of 5 to 6 feet long. The water is so pristine that in many areas you can see clear to the bottom 60 feet. But yet these coral formations rise up almost to the surface. So you feel like you're floating over these polychromatic mountain ranges. Because of some of the shifts in whale migration patterns, there are even some moments at dusk where the sounds of whales carry in the salt air from them singing beneath the distant waves. So you're spending this 100 days just looking out on just pure, beautiful Atlantic Ocean. Within 30 seconds, you are in the water itself. But you're not doing it just for that. You're doing it for this reciprocity and research. So at the end of the semester, when you're presenting what you've learned, you're presenting this research, government ministers often fly in from Grand Turk, the capital, to listen to the student research. And then some of the student data has then impacted national policy on the marine protection zones, the overfishing of grouper, whether there should be a ban on the export of conch. So you can return to Hamilton with a semester of credits with these research skills, but also know that your research is having this positive impact in the place that you studied.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Devin, for that great presentation. Before we move forward, Mary Rogers from Arcadia will be next. But before we move forward, I just wanted to let everyone know that you do have the opportunity to submit questions this evening or this afternoon or morning, depending on your time zone. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A option. You're welcome to put questions about any of these programs or about the fall experiences in general before coming to Hamilton in January. My colleague Martha Redmond is actually behind the scenes with us today. Martha will be monitoring all the questions that come in, so please don't hesitate to submit any questions that you have along the way through the Q&A here in the Zoom webinar. But I want to hand things over now to Mary. So Mary will now present about the Arcadia program in London.
All right, thank you so much, Nikki. I'm going to share my screen. If I could just get a thumbs up when I actually get this into slideshow mode, that would really help me out. Are we good on the slideshow? Yeah.
Not quite yet. Oh, yes, now we see it.
You're good? All right.
Yep.
Great. All right. So as I said, I am here representing the London program from Arcadia for the Hamilton Jans. So a quick introduction to Arcadia and why London. Arcadia is a small university located just outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we are known for study abroad. It's kind of our thing. So we have been sending students abroad since 1948. We sent a group of women to post-World War II Europe to tour around Europe and to see what Reconstruction looked like during the post-war effort. And we have continued in that long tradition, and we have expanded our program offerings. But our largest study abroad center is our center in London, which is where your program will be based. On this program, you do earn a full semester of transfer credit to begin your spring semester at Hamilton with a full stack of credits behind you so you get off on the right foot. You will have the opportunity to connect and form lasting bonds with other Hamilton Jans, which we know is important to you as you are thinking about what you are doing in your fall semester. And some of the things that students really articulate that they get out of this program are an opportunity to increase your independence and gain important life skills, cooking, budgeting, navigating public transport. London is a huge city, and depending on where you're coming from, if you were from a more rural location or even just from a different city, some students really like that opportunity to experience city life before going to Hamilton up on the hill. So we really curate this program as an opportunity to experience the culture of London at a deeper level than if you have been there before, on vacation with your family, or are thinking about some of the top tourist sites that students want to do. We are really trying to take you out into the city and utilize it as a classroom. So this picture here on the far left-hand side is our study abroad center in London. It is the facade of the building. So you'll see the address here. You can take a screenshot if you'd like. It is 16/17 Southampton Place. So one building is 16, one building is 17. And that's where all of our classrooms are and our staff and faculty are located. It is in Bloomsbury. The nearest tube station is Holborn. It is a 10-minute walk from the British Museum and really close to all those hot spots that I was just talking about, in terms of what, people would like to see and do when they visit London for a short period of time. And you're just going to be there for the whole semester and really able to learn it and live it. We have a lot of on-site support for students outside of academics. So we do have a student life team. You will be assigned an on-site program contact for the time that you are in London, who will be doing check-ins with you throughout the semester. There's a small writing center, there's a computer lounge, there is a student lounge for you to take a break in between classes. But one of the awesome things about where our center is located is that if you pull it up on Google Maps, you'll see there's a bunch of different coffee shops and restaurants and little parks and all of those things. So, in between classes or when you have free time, you can really explore the neighborhood. And London, as big as it is a city of neighborhoods. And so that is one of the things that students really enjoy about their time on the program, is getting to learn the city. Speaking of the program, it is a study abroad program. So we're going to talk a little bit about academics. You will be enrolled in 4 classes for a total of 16 credits that are taught at the London Center. There is an option to take one of those 4 classes at a British university for a supplemental fee, but I'll be honest, most students are pretty happy with the course choices that are approved by Hamilton, that are taught by our faculty in our center, and so it's not required to take the course at a British university. And I think a lot of students get what they're looking for out of the program just with the Arcadia classes. Showcasing the Nation is your cornerstone course. So every student on this program will be enrolled in Showcasing the Nation. It is a writing course, and it has been approved by Hamilton for one of your writing credits that you'll receive when you matriculate. In the spring, we actually did develop the syllabus for this program alongside faculty from Hamilton to make sure it was hitting any important benchmarks that it needed to, so that you could get that credit. We are able to provide classes virtually if needed. That has become less relevant in this tail end of this COVID wave, but it is something that we have adapted to. And so should you need to isolate or be sick, courses are recorded, lectures are recorded, so you can catch up on them and things like that. Our faculty are teachers and scholars. They are local to London. They are really active and published in their fields of research, and they love sharing that knowledge with students both in and outside of the classroom and both in and outside of class. So a lot of our faculty are taking students on excursions, walking tours throughout the city, showing students their favorite neighborhoods, and really getting you beyond the superficial, beyond the surface of the city, which is something that we really value and place importance on while you're on this program. Again, you can take a picture of this screen. The Hamilton does have a page dedicated to how these courses transfer back and forth. Housing, I know this is a hot topic and a big question. So all students, all Hamilton first year students will be living in Princess Elizabeth House, which is in Highgate. So that is in North London. It is about a 35 to 40-minute commute to our London center. So this is one of the, let's call it a charm of big city living, where we do have an urban campus. So you are not going to be living in the same neighborhood where you're going to be taking classes, but this gives you an opportunity to learn another part of the city. So Princess Elizabeth House is dormitory style apartments. There are singles or twin bedrooms. Most students should expect to share a room. You will also have shared common space such as kitchens, bathrooms. There's a big common room. There's some study rooms as well. We do provide a bedding pack. That's my number one asked question. There are laundry facilities on site, and there is no meal plan. So this is where the cooking and independent living come in, where students learn their neighborhood because they're shopping for groceries and going to farmers markets and all of those things, bonding, doing group dinners, and exploring what it's like to truly live in London for the semester. We do have on-site resident life assistants, so they are comparable to an RA that you would be able to go to mitigate any housing issues and to really just be your Arcadia support staff on site. They are in addition to a full-time student life team, again, who are staffed at our London center. We have some tours of Princess Elizabeth House on the program page. It's a video tour that was uploaded to YouTube, so definitely check it out if you are interested. More about the neighborhood. As I said, Highgate is in North London. It's pretty residential. It is within walking distance to public transit. If you're looking for the nearest tube station, students use Archway. There is a bus that goes from the Archway tube station up the hill that students tend to use a lot on their way back from class. If you're somebody who's really looking to exercise, while you're on the program, the walk up the hill is something that I hear about often, but you'll definitely get that workout if you opt to do that instead of the bus. Other cool things in the neighborhood, my personal favorite is Highgate Cemetery. If you're somebody who likes wandering around cemeteries and seeing all those cool things and just likes the vibe in a cemetery, there's also some pretty interesting people buried there. So one person that you may have heard of who is buried in Highgate Cemetery is Karl Marx. So definitely check it out while you're there. Student life. This is actually a group of Hamilton Jans from fall 2020. So yes, we even ran this program during the height of COVID, and look at how happy all of these Jans are in this picture with Stonehenge in the background. So student life on this program will look a little different depending on what you opt in and opt out of. We have an orientation program that every student participates in, and throughout the semester we do have excursions that are organized by Arcadia that you can opt into doing. Some of these are free excursions. We call them hidden London events. So again, staff or faculty will take you into little pockets of the city, maybe a countryside walk, things that you wouldn't normally think of on your own that our Arcadia team are just like, these are really cool spots that we like to go to, and we would like to share them with you. That happens a lot during the semester. Paid excursions go live for the fall semester in August. Examples of those excursions will vary in price and they will vary in length, just depending on what they are. Football matches, theater visits, a weekend to Wales, a day trip to Stonehenge, like you just saw. When we finalize what those events are, we notify everybody via email. They are open to every Arcadia student who is studying abroad with us in England and in London specifically. So they're not just for Hamilton Jans. And again, your semester will look like what you want it to look like. You'll have a lot of free time outside of your class. And so I always tell students your free time is your free time. So you don't have to do an Arcadia excursion. If there's something that you really want to do and we haven't organized a trip for it, you're free to go do it on your own. And you can organize your friends together and you can go, do a weekend trip up to, Liverpool or something like that. Although I do think we might have done an excursion to Liverpool. So just an example. Health and safety. This is a hot topic nowadays, in particular because of COVID, but it's actually something that we really value as a study abroad provider, and it's something that we take very seriously. Many of the issues that we help students deal with on a day-to-day basis are personal in nature. So a student would like to set up appointments with a therapist while they are on the program to help them maintain some equilibrium, and it's something that's working for them here. Students lose their passports, students have their wallets stolen, those kinds of things. A lot of emergent large-scale events that you may see on the news, a pandemic notwithstanding, are not necessarily things that we are guiding students through on a daily basis. Every student is covered by health insurance while on the program that does include mental health support. We do have 24/7 health and safety support through our insurance provider and Arcadia support staff. Again, we do a comprehensive virtual orientation, making sure you know how to connect the dots and who to go to. We do an airport pickup for students when you arrive. And again, you will have a designated program advisor in London when you get there that you'll have scheduled check-ins with, but is also going to be your point of contact if you need to speak with somebody. In terms of COVID, because we do have to mention it, we expect that by the time you go to London in the fall, all current restrictions will continue to be lifted. Restrictions in the UK are currently lifted. Vaccination programs have been completed, working on booster shots, if there is a fourth booster shot, those kinds of things. But by and large, the vaccination programs are complete. The UK vaccination rate is very high compared to the United States. There may be some social distancing measures put in place just depending on what case counts look like, particularly as the weather gets colder. It's to be seen how the UK government may respond to something like that with their rate of vaccination. But as I just said, we ran programs in fall 2020 before the vaccine was released. And so we are really adaptive and able to respond to what changing local restrictions are. And that's really the key, is that we are responsive to local and government guidance on what students need to do. And then we just adapt our programs as needed. An example is for current housing rules is that there's no guests permitted in housing overnight or otherwise. So unless you're a resident of Princess Elizabeth House, you are not permitted in a Princess Elizabeth House. And so that has actually been a pretty consistent COVID standard that we've kept in place for the past 2 years. We do evaluate that semester by semester to see if it still makes sense. It is in place right now for the summer students, and we'll look at it again for the fall. Finally, our vaccination policy is that we require proof of full vaccination and a booster shot for all program participants. Our full policy is available online. Again, if you want to take a screenshot so that you can go find that web URL link. And to wrap things up, we do have the link here for your program page on the Arcadia website. The deadline to submit your application is May 15th. Now, this is important because Hamilton doesn't share your names with us, not with anybody here, actually. So you'll need to tell Arcadia or SFS or the C semester that you want to go on our program by applying. And so that's really important. So Arcadia's deadline is May 15th. That means that you need to have gone to our website and applied for the Hamilton Freshman Fall in London program by May 15th and submitted all the supplemental materials that we're asking for. The program cost is $17,975. That's the standard price. If you add a class from a British institution, there will be supplemental fees associated with that. We do have a need-based scholarship available. You can apply for that online. And my colleague, Christina Terry, who some of you may have met already if you have applied, is actually working one-to-one with students. So I've put her contact information here so that you can reach her. And that is it from me. I'll conclude my presentation now.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Mary. We'll turn it over to Mark now, who will talk about the Sea Education Association.
Thank you. I'm going to, let's see, screen share. All right. Is that visible?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, you have difficult choices to make, it seems. So many good options. So yeah, Sea Education Association is celebrating our 50th year this year. We've been sort of taking students to sea to learn about the ocean environment for 50 years. And we're excited about our next 50 that are coming up. We are a program that's based in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, that focuses on, I'll talk a bit about that in a second, focuses on environmental issues related to the ocean and the ocean sort of land interface. The themes that run throughout our programs are climate change issues, issues of sustainability, biodiversity, human impacts on the environment, and increasingly issues of environmental justice, which is something that is something that we're increasingly focusing much of our academic work on as well. This is an image of our ship in the Pacific, the Robert C. Seamans, at an island called, that we refer to as HTHH in the country of Tonga. It was an island that was formed just a few years ago, and we were there with one of our programs with NASA. NASA's Mars team wanted to visit the island, and we were the only research vessel that was visiting HTHH. So I love this image for that reason alone, that we took students to a new island in Tonga with NASA, which is a fun thing to experience. So our programs, we're based in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, which is in Cape Cod, on the sort of southwestern tip of Cape Cod. If you've visited Martha's Vineyard, you'd likely gone through Woods Hole to get on the ferry to head to Martha's Vineyard. It is a diverse town or a town that's focused on marine science research mostly. And our programs all begin and spend 6 weeks on our campus in Woods Hole. Here's a visual image of Cape Cod. Again, we're down that left corner. You can see where Martha's Vineyard is. We're sort of headed right in that corner there. Woods Hole is an interesting place. It feels like a college campus. A lot of the buildings in the core of the sort of village were built in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And feel like a college campus. A lot of it's based from the Marine Biological Laboratory, which has been there since the late 19th century. And it is also home to other research institutions like the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. There's a NOAA office there. There's a USGS office there. And there's also the Woodwell Climate Center, which is a leading research institute on climate change globally. And there's the Sea Education Association. We are the only institution that's primarily geared toward undergraduate education. The others are research only institutions. So we fit in this community in a really interesting way. And we have a lot of great friends and colleagues in all the institutions that we lean on for expertise in the fields, and they come in as guest lecturers in most of our programs. So I'll give you a shot of campus. I feel like that. There we go. Sorry, didn't load. These are the resident cottages where students live when they're on campus. So our programs are basically 6 weeks in Woods Hole, where students come and engage in a kind of somewhat typical classroom experience. Something you'll be very familiar with. Students live roughly 12 to a cottage when they're on campus. The campus has a small library. It has 2 classrooms, a large lecture hall, computer room, et cetera, things, and a laboratory as well, a science lab. So things that you would be used to on a campus. And students also have access increasingly, this was not true for the last 2 years during COVID, but to access to the town of Woods Hole and the town of Falmouth, which we're situated near as well, with a bike path running between them. So easy access to those towns. And we encourage students, again, COVID conditions dependent, to spend their free time sort of examining the Cape. We are a close walk to a beach, a private beach that we have access to. So easy access to the Atlantic Ocean when you're on campus as well. But let's talk about the sea component, because that's what most students are interested in. So after 6 weeks on campus, where we're giving you the basic academic sort of groundwork for the programs at sea, we then transfer you to our ship. So the program that I'm going to encourage you to look for is, and I'll post a link in a minute, for that program is called Ocean Exploration. And this fall is running as Wonders of the Deep Blue. So it's focused on the sort of ecosystem in the open Atlantic. And the program will leave from Woods Hole on our ship, the Corwith Kramer, and will sail down eventually to the Caribbean. So along sort of north-south transit in the Atlantic. When you're on the ship, you are a member of our crew. We are a fairly distinct Coast Guard category. It's called a sailing school vessel, or an SSV. We actually pioneered that category, and we're the first ship to be granted that status from the U.S. Coast Guard. Our ships are Coast Guard flagged and Coast Guard regulated. There is a professional crew on the ship, around 12 crew members, but students are also crew, and the students will participate fully in the running of the ship when they're in the program and when at sea. I want to talk a bit about COVID because we can't duck that right now. We also ran programs from fall 2020 to now. We have students at sea, both in the Pacific and the Atlantic at the moment. We ran them without a single case. We're pretty proud of that record. We had a lot of things in place, protocols in place, both on campus, because we needed to make sure that we did not take COVID with us to sea, right? Because we didn't want to be that ship at sea with a COVID outbreak. So we were able to do that, again, running all of our programs in the Atlantic through the COVID outbreak. I will say now that we're now in a sort of mask optional situation as well. We're following closely with both Massachusetts regulations as well as CDC guidance, and that may change. We're hoping that it will continue to improve, and we expect that to be the case. We have altered our cruise tracks through COVID, removing port stops as necessary, and we're now adding them back, although the Wonders of the Deep Blue is really an open ocean focused program, so there are no scheduled port stops in that particular program. So this is the vessel for that trip, the Atlantic ship, the Corwith Kramer. It gives you the stats here, but it's basically a 134 feet overall length. It was built specifically for us. It's steel hulled vessel. It has again, Coast Guard regulated and Coast Guard licensed crew. Also has, it's hard to point out here, but in the middle you see a sort of a raised structure there. That is the lab, the science lab, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But the work we do on the way is based on the lab work that's run out of that lab, both a wet and a dry lab. So talk a bit about life at sea. The students, again, part of the crew, the ship runs 24/7. Once you're at sea, there is no, there's no stopping. You can't pull over. So the ship runs 24/7 once we leave Woods Hole. There will be stretches in this sail south in which the closest humans to you will either be humans on another ship, or in some cases, people on the International Space Station, where it will be that far from land in some cases. And it is a completely self-sufficient vessel. There'll be enough food for the entire journey. The 6 weeks on the ship the galley will be, and the pantry will be stocked in advance. There's a professional cook on board we call a steward, often an assistant steward as well. Students do rotate through the kitchen. Once we have sort of a student a day who helps work in the kitchens. They get a sense of what it's like to both feed 30-something people, which is a unique experience, and also to cook at sea, which is certainly a unique experience. So students work as crew members. You will be divided into watches. We have 3 watches, A, B, and C watch, and there is a watch standing 24/7. So at times you will stand a dawn watch, which means you come on to duty, on the watch duty sort of before sunrise, and you watch the sunrise out of the Atlantic. It's actually the best watch to be on, in my opinion, to watch that sunrise in the morning. But at other times you'll stand watch, at night, so you'll be out under the open stars of the Atlantic. We do teach celestial navigation, so you will learn to navigate the ship by sextant while you're underway. And we also, of course, have modern navigational techniques, satellites, radars, etc. But it is an important part of the experience, I think, that we sort of get students to really appreciate the ecosystem that they're in. 70% of the earth is covered by ocean, and it's a part of the world that most people don't really get to experience. And so this, I think, it's somewhat a unique experience to be able to just really sort of engage in the open ocean ecosystem in ways that are fairly unique. Important to point out that you need no sailing experience. We do get students who have sailed. Very few of them have sailed the tall ships in the open in blue water, but you don't need to know how to sail. That's something we will teach you. One of the courses you'll take on shore, and I'll talk about the classes in a minute, is what we call nautical science, and it's basically the captain of the trip who will then sail with you, who teaches you all that you need to know about sail theory, about how sails work, how sailboats work. You'll learn navigational skills on shore, etc. And then when you get to sea, you will implement that knowledge, and the professional crew will help you learn how to do it in real time once on the vessel. Once a day, we will gather the entire ship's company on the quarterdeck if the weather allows, which is the back end of the ship out in the open for a class, and the subjects will vary depending on the day, but it'll be something about nautical science or oceanography or what we call Maritime Studies, which is basically a history-based course on the human interaction with the oceans, with an environmental and environmental justice focus for sure. So again, the themes that we research, and they're open for student research projects. These are the projects in the oceanography course in particular, or something you'll develop with your faculty member, your oceanographer on shore. You will leave campus from Woods Hole with basically a fully developed research plan that you will implement once at sea. Here are students lowering what's called a CTD, basically on a wire down into the deep for sampling, and depending on your project, will determine what kind of sampling you're doing. And again, all of that, all the samples are then processed in the lab on the ship itself. Again, a lot of the focus is on biodiversity and sustainability, and we also have a strong sort of history of ocean plastics research. We actually have one of, if not the best, ocean plastics database in the world, since we've been basically sampling ocean water since 1970. We have 50 years of plastics samples to draw from. We have been sounding the alarm. We have a number of faculty members who've published extensively, testified in front of the United Nations, testified in front of the EU on issues of ocean plastics and the threats they pose. I encourage you, there's a New York Times article published just last week about microplastics at sea that is quite eye-opening and worth a read. So I encourage you to go find that if you have a chance. Again, all of our faculty are based with us in Woods Hole and have been with us in many cases for many years, decades, and all of our faculty are engaged in both research and publication on oceanography and maritime history and anthropology as well. And I think the research we do is critically important for understanding the role of the oceans in sort of maintaining the balance of the global ecosystem. It's particularly important as it's becoming increasingly sort of publicly known in the global carbon cycle. It's something we focus a lot of attention on as well, and something that you certainly could research with your time at sea. Students do sort of get a lot of support from us in terms of what we offer in terms of our student services, both onshore and at sea. We work with students to sort of pre-screen students to sort of get a sense of what your needs might be, and then to work with you once you're on campus. We are absolutely committed to taking everyone who's interested in our programs to sea with us, and have, again, a 50-year record of doing exactly that. And so we're proud of our ability to, I'm sorry, couldn't get the next slide to go, to sort of nurture students through what may be an uncomfortable situation for some. One of the things about life at sea is that it's outside of a lot of people's comfort zone. As was stressed with the School for Field Studies, you will be there with folks in our program with people who chose to go. And so it is in some sense self-selected, but I find that the students really build quite a bond with each other and with the faculty with whom you will sail and have lunch, have 3 meals a day with, and spend time on the ship with, but also with the crew. And I think the bonding between students and the professional crew is a unique experience. And it's not a coincidence that a lot of our professional crew were in fact students at SEA first, who got the bug to spend time at sea. And they often will spend some years with us before transitioning to graduate programs in oceanography. So it's a fairly common career path for us. Some information here on the application process. The Wonders of the Deep program is not full, but it's filling. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to reach out to us. We have other programs. This is the one we think is the best fit for you, as Hamilton Jan admits. But we have a range of programs that you can find on the website. But we do have financial aid, need-based aid. Certainly for students, we give over $1 million of aid a year in scholarships. So that is certainly available. Quote from a student from Kenyon College about their experience at SEA, which I particularly enjoy reading. So in my experience, SEA on my resume was this central talking piece. Many interviewers thought it was really cool to see a job candidate who at one point in their college career decided to produce data for important environmental research. Pardon me. I think that many employers view SEA alums as individuals who show real initiative. So we do find that it is a unique set of students that are attracted to our programs every year. We have students who come out of our programs who publish articles with their faculty, who engage in, and in many cases who find that this is a niche that they want to pursue as a career path, and not just as a sort of a unique space in, just a one-off or unique experience. So I feel like I'm losing my voice. I apologize. It is getting late, so I will leave it at that and answer questions if you have any. And I will.
Great. Well, all 3 of those presentations were fascinating. I wish I could do all 3 of our great partner programs. I wish I had a fall semester to be able to pursue all 3 of these programs. So thank you to Devin and Mary and Mark for your great information. I'm actually going to share my screen now. I'm going to take a turn here at sharing my screen. And this is going to give you a slide with all of our partner program contact information. So you are welcome to follow up directly with any of these 3 individuals with your specific questions about these partner programs. You're certainly welcome to direct specific questions about these programs to Devin, Mark, or Mary, but also feel free to reach out to me in the admission office. Any of my colleagues in the admission office, we can also point you towards some other resources as you continue to explore your fall options. I regret that we are running short on time. I know some great questions were submitted this evening in the Q&A and in the chat. So thank you for submitting those great questions. My colleague Martha Redmond, who's, as I said, is behind the scenes this evening, has actually noted all of these questions because in the interest of time, unfortunately, we're not just going to be able to answer those questions live today, but Martha Redmond has noted those questions, and we will actually be forwarding those questions directly to Devin, Mark, and Mary so that they can follow up with you directly to give you the information in response to all the questions that you submitted today. I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations again to all of you on your admission at Hamilton. We do hope that you choose to join our community next year. It would be delightful to get to welcome you to Hamilton next January, but feel free to reach out with any questions as you continue to explore your fall options. Thank you to Devin, Mary, and Mark, and to Martha behind the scenes. We hope you found this experience helpful this evening as you continue to think about your fall options. But congratulations again, and enjoy the rest of your day.